February 1941, Bay of Biscay, off the French coast. Grey seas stretched to the horizon, broken only by the periscopes of a rising wolf pack. The hatch of U-123 creaks open, and Captain Lieutenant Reinhard Hardegen climbs to the conning tower, his oilskin coat whipping in the Atlantic wind. Above him, the morning sky is still, cold, empty. "Lookouts!" he barks. "Any sign of patrols?" "None, Herr Cologne," the watchman replies. "Only gulls." Hardegen smiles. "The Allies send their toy planes again, maybe? Those flying cows?" The crew laughs. They've seen them before. The PBY Catalina, a bulbous American-built flying boat now used by the Royal Air Force's Coastal Command. Painted grey and slow as a fishing trawler, the Catalina was easy prey for any fighter or U-boat gun crew. The Germans mockingly called it Die fliegende Kuh, the flying cow. Below deck, diesel engines rumble as the U-boat dives once more, gliding into the depths. Around them, the Battle of the Atlantic rages. A silent war fought between hunters and hunted, and for now, the hunters are winning. Hundreds of Allied ships are being sunk each month. Wolf packs, coordinated groups of German submarines, move like phantoms through the sea, attacking convoys by night and vanishing by dawn. The surface burns with oil and fire, while beneath the waves, the U-boats slip away untouched. At RAF Castle Archdale in Northern Ireland, a young British pilot named Flight Lieutenant Peter Langford stands beside a Catalina resting in the shallows. Its massive wings stretch wide, its twin Pratt & Whitney R-1830 twin Wasp engines dripping seawater from the last patrol. Langford tosses his cigarette into the surf. "They laugh at us," he mutters to his co-pilot. "They won't be laughing long," the other man replies, nodding toward a group of ground crew unloading a crate marked Top Secret. Lee Light Experimental Unit. Inside is a strange device, a high-powered searchlight meant to be mounted beneath the Catalina's wing. Designed by engineer Humphrey de Verd Lee, it promises something revolutionary, the ability to see submarines at night. Until now, the Catalinas could detect U-boats only with radar, and once radar contact was made, the pilot had to descend through darkness, blind and guessing. By the time his eyes adjusted, the target was gone. But with this new light, the Catalina could expose the ocean like daylight, and strike before the enemy even knew it was there. Langford runs a hand along the metal casing. "So that's it," he says. "A light bulb to win the war." The ground crew chief grins. "Not just any light bulb, sir. This one kills U-boats." The next night, Langford's crew takes off from Lough Erne. The Catalina rises slowly, engines droning, its wingtips brushing low clouds as it heads west into the Atlantic. At 0200 hours, the radar operator calls out, "Contact! Bearing 145, range 2 miles. Langford banks left, throttling down to avoid alerting the target. The waves below are black and silent. Then, as he presses the switch, a cone of white light floods the ocean. There, dead ahead, the steel shadow of a submarine breaks the surface, caught like prey in a hunter's beam. "U-boat, 200 yards. Depth charges ready." Langford pushes the yoke forward. The Catalina dives, the engines screaming. Depth charges tumble from the racks, hissing as they vanish into the glow. Seconds later, the sea erupts in a thunderclap of white water and flame. The light flickers, then steadies, illuminating an oil slick spreading across the waves. For the first time, a Catalina has killed a U-boat at night, and by dawn, every surviving German crewman in the Bay of Biscay will know that the flying cow can see in the dark. May 1943, North Atlantic, 0400 hours. The ocean is a graveyard of mist and silence. Fog drifts low over the water as U-563, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Günther Luth, surfaces to recharge its batteries. The hatches open, and the salty air floods in. Crewmen light cigarettes, grateful for a moment of calm. "Radar clear?" Luth asks. "Nothing, Herr Cologne," comes the reply. "Sea and sky." both empty, but above that shroud of fog, invisible to the naked eye, a shape glides silently. Its long wings slice through the clouds. A PBY Catalina, painted matte black for night operations. Inside, red lights bathe the cockpit. The pilot, Flight Lieutenant Peter Langford, stares at his radar screen. "Contact 2 miles, bearing 090, the operator says, his voice barely above a whisper. Langford nods. "Keep it steady." The Catalina creeps closer, engines throttled low. The crew moves with quiet precision, every man alert, every sound magnified. In the rear compartment, Sergeant Dennis Wilkes, the flight engineer, checks the depth charge racks one last time. His hands tremble slightly, not from fear, but from the cold bite of the high-altitude air leaking through the fuselage. Langford peers out through the canopy, eyes straining. Below, nothing but darkness. He flips a switch. Lee light. Standby. Seconds crawl by. Then, another blip on the radar. Closer now. The U-boat, unaware it's being stalked, continues its routine. On deck, Luth's men laugh quietly, watching phosphorescent waves roll past the hull. "Surface watch, report," Luth calls. "All clear, sir." Langford's finger hovers over the trigger. Now, the night explodes into daylight. The Lee light floods the ocean with 22 million candle power, revealing the U-boat in stunning clarity. Grey hull glistening, men frozen in terror. "Target acquired," Wilkes shouts. "Attack run." Langford dives the Catalina. Wind shrieks through the struts as the aircraft plunges toward the sea, depth charges tumbling from its wings. Below, Luth's crew scrambles. "Alarm! Dive! Dive!" Sirens wail. Men race for the conning tower. The sub begins to submerge. Too late. The first depth charge detonates just off the port bow. A second rips open the ballast tank. The shockwave lifts the submarine like a toy, snapping lights and bursting pipes. Within seconds, compartments flood. On the Catalina, the crew feels the blast through the airframe. "Direct hit," Wilkes yells. "She's breaking up." Langford circles back, watching the chaos unfold. Through the glare of the searchlight, oil and debris spread across the surface, a sheen of black shimmering against the whitecaps. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then Langford mutters quietly, "That's for convoy ONS-5. He's referring to one of the worst convoy disasters of the war, when dozens of Allied ships were sunk by U-boats in a single week. Now, the balance is shifting. By mid-1943, the Catalina squadrons of Coastal Command have become the terror of the Atlantic. Once mocked as slow and clumsy, they now patrol the air for 16-hour stretches, their radar and searchlights turning the ocean into a hunting ground. In 1 week alone, they sink or cripple 8 submarines, forcing German wolf packs to retreat under cover of night. And even that is no longer safe. At a U-boat base in Lorient, France, Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the Kriegsmarine, reads the latest reports in grim silence. U-563 lost, presumed destroyed by air attack. U-448 missing. U-4556 sunk near Greenland, sighted by flying boat. He slams his fist on the table. These Catalinas are everywhere. They crawl across the skies like spiders. His operations officer speaks quietly. "Sir, the men call them the angels of death. They say the light comes before the end." Dönitz looks out across the harbour, where the few remaining U-boats rest under heavy concrete pens. "Then tell them," he says, "to fear the light." Thousands of miles away, at Castle Archdale, Langford and his exhausted crew step onto the dock. Their Catalina, still dripping salt water, bears new stenciling on its nose, "Lily's Light." A young mechanic hands him a slip of paper. Another U-boat confirmed destroyed. "Congratulations, sir." Langford doesn't smile. He just stares out over the lake, the wind cold against his face. "They'll send more," he says, "and we'll be waiting." For the first time in the war, the hunters of the deep are the ones being hunted. June 1943. Mid-Atlantic, 400 miles south of Iceland. The grey dawn comes slowly over the ocean, a dim light filtering through the clouds like smoke. Beneath the waves, U-564 drifts silent, its crew listening to the steady hum of the electric motors. They've been submerged for 18 hours, batteries nearly drained, oxygen thick with diesel fumes. Surface at first light, orders Kapitän-Leutnant Reinhard Suren. We need air. And the boat ascends cautiously, surfacing just as the first rays of morning touch the sea. The hatches open, and the crew breathes in cold air that stings their lungs. For a brief moment, the ocean feels calm, vast, empty, theirs again. Then, from somewhere beyond the mist, comes a distant hum. "Aircraft engines!" the lookout shouts. Suren snaps his head upward. Through the low fog, a shadow moves, slow, deliberate, impossibly wide wings gliding overhead. A Catalina. Alarm! Dive! The klaxon wails. Men tumble down ladders as ballast tanks flood, but the U-boat is too slow. The Catalina already has them locked in. Inside the aircraft, Flight Lieutenant Peter Langford leans forward in his seat, his eyes fixed on the water below. "Radar contact lost," the operator reports. "She's diving." Langford switches on the ASV Mark III radar, sweeping the area for a faint echo, the glimmer of metal under the waves. "There, prepare depth charges," he orders. The Catalina banks hard, engines straining, then drops low over the sea. From the open bomb bay, 6 Mark 11 depth charges fall, their green casings slicing into the grey water. The first detonation comes seconds later. A column of water shoots skyward, followed by a second, closer, then a third that erupts directly over the diving U-boat. The pressure crushes steel like paper. Inside U-564, gauges explode, lights shatter, and seawater floods through ruptured seams. Men scream, clinging to rails as the boat tilts violently. Suren grips the periscope handles, whispering one last command: "Seal the compartments." But the order dies on his lips as the control room fills with black water. From above, Langford's crew watches the surface. A black slick rises slowly, spreading wider and wider. Bubbles break, then bodies. Sailors in oil-stained uniforms, floating lifeless among the debris. "Target destroyed," the navigator says quietly. Langford nods, his jaw tight. "Mark the coordinates. Let's go home." The Catalina turns for base, its engines rumbling across a sea that's once again silent, except for the hiss of dying waves. That same week, Allied air patrols report 41 U-boats destroyed in a single month, the worst losses the Kriegsmarine has ever suffered. The once invincible wolf packs are now bleeding faster than Germany can replace them. In Lorient, Admiral Karl Dönitz studies a wall map of the Atlantic, covered in red pins, each one marking a lost submarine. His staff stands in silence. "They no longer fear the night," Dönitz mutters. "They see us even in the dark." He orders all U-boat operations in the North Atlantic temporarily suspended, a decision unthinkable just a year earlier. The Battle of the Atlantic, the campaign Hitler once called unwinnable for the Allies, is now turning against him. At RAF Castle Archdale, Langford steps out of his Catalina as the rain begins to fall. The aircraft's hull bears the scars of countless patrols, bullet holes patched with metal, salt stains running down the fuselage. Mechanics swarm over it, preparing for the next mission. A young ground officer greets him with a clipboard. "Word from London, sir. They're saying the tide's turning." Langford gives a tired half smile. "The tide never turns by itself. You've got to drag it." He looks up at the Catalina's massive wing. The flying cow, once laughed at by both friend and foe, now carries 22 confirmed U-boat kills, more than any other aircraft type in Coastal Command. As night falls, Langford watches his crew load fresh depth charges under floodlights. The engines rumble, the smell of fuel thick in the air. He turns to his co-pilot and says quietly, "You know what they call us now." The man shakes his head. "The shepherds of the Atlantic," Langford says, "because we keep the wolves away." And out there in the darkness, the last surviving U-boats listens for that hum in the sky, the sound that means the hunt has come for them. August 1943. North Atlantic, near Greenland. The sea is black glass under a cold moon. The German submarine U-489 glides on the surface, its diesel engines droning softly. Inside the control room, men speak in hushed tones, their faces drawn and pale. They've been at sea for 6 weeks, hunted, exhausted, running low on fuel. At the chart table, Oberleutnant Hans Hartenstein traces their course with trembling fingers. "We stay surfaced until dawn," he says. "No radar detected, no aircraft in range." The radio man frowns. "Sir, Coastal Command claims to have aircraft that can fly from Scotland to here now. 20 hours endurance." Hartenstein scoffs. "Nonsense. They'd need wings like a battleship." Outside, the Atlantic wind carries only the sound of waves. The crew relaxes slightly. Some smoke cigarettes. Others stare at the horizon. Then a faint hum begins to rise. Low, distant, growing. "Aircraft!" the lookout screams. Hartenstein rushes topside, peering into the darkness. There, against the pale edge of the moon, a black shape glides toward them, low and steady. Twin engines, long wings, a PBY Catalina. "Alarm! Flak crew, open fire!" Machine guns chatter from the deck as the Catalina swoops in, engines howling. From the pilot's seat, Flight Lieutenant Peter Langford squints through the gun sight. The tracers stream past his canopy. "Hold steady! Steady!" The Catalina thunders directly over the U-boat, releasing 4 depth charges. They splash down in perfect formation, too short, too long. "Dive! Dive!" Hartenstein yells. The first charge detonates off the stern, lifting the submarine out of the water. The second explodes dead center, shattering the conning tower. Flames and debris erupt skyward. Men are flung into the freezing sea. Langford banks left, circling the wreck. Through the smoke, he can see survivors clinging to debris. One waves a white rag. Another tries to fire a flare gun but drops it into the water. The Catalina passes overhead again, its shadow crossing the dying waves. For a moment, Langford hesitates. "We'll radio for pickup," he says quietly. "Let's give them a chance." But fate is merciless. As rescue ships approach hours later, the survivors are gone, claimed by the sea. In the months that follow, the once proud U-boat arm of the Kriegsmarine collapses. Out of 863 submarines that set sail during the war, more than 750 are lost, many to aircraft like the Catalina. What began as a slow, ungainly patrol plane becomes one of the most feared hunters in military history. By late 1943, German sailors no longer mock the Fliegende Kuh. They whisper its name in dread. Convoys that once sailed under constant threat now pass safely, escorted by the watchful eyes in the sky. The Catalina has become the shepherd of the Atlantic, and the wolves are gone. October 1945. RAF Castle Archdale, Northern Ireland. The war is over. The base is quiet now, the air heavy with rain and memory. In a hangar by the lake, a weathered PBY Catalina sits stripped of its markings, its engines silent. Peter Langford, now a wing commander, runs his hand along the faded fuselage. The paint is blistered, the hull patched and pitted. On the nose, the name still faintly reads, Lily's Light. A young mechanic approaches. "Sir, they're scrapping her tomorrow." Langford nods slowly. "She's earned her rest." He pauses, gazing out at the mist-covered water. "When we started," he says softly, "they called her a flying cow. Too slow, too clumsy, but she never failed us. She just kept flying." The mechanic hesitates. "They say the U-boats feared her, sir." Langford smiles faintly. "Good. Fear kept them under, and that saved a lot of good men." As the fog thickens, the sound of rain on metal echoes through the hangar, a quiet requiem for the plane that once lit up the Atlantic night. The Catalina never roared like a fighter, never dazzled like a bomber, but it endured through ice, storm, and endless hours of silence, bringing light to the darkest sea. In the end, the hunters of the deep learned what arrogance had blinded them to all along. Even the slowest wings can bring death when guided by courage. and a beam of light in the night sky can change the course of a war.